food's always been my comfort, and I've always said that food has helped me when I'm sad, when I'm happy, when I'm nervous, when I'm excited, and it's been for every emotion. So I think when it's every emotion, it's so hard to get rid of that, because yes, we need food to eat, we need food to eat, and you're so right about, drugs. You can come off that, because we don't need drugs to live, but we do need food. And I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done around this to understand actually that obesity isn't actually necessarily, it's not people being lazy. We're not sitting down eating cakes all day. You know that we're not doing that. It's our mindset, and our mindset is physically shown. I realise now that I was ill, mentally ill, but it was showing physically in my body, if that makes sense.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Slimming Stories. I'm your host, Claire Oldham-West. Got a great guest for you this week, an absolute gem of a guest. What I've actually done this week is I've divided this week's episode into two, because we've had a long chat, and it's a different weight loss story. This is a weight loss story all around the gastric bypass procedure. And I think it's really important that this is covered. I know that this may not be the solution that you're looking towards to lose weight, but if you're someone that maybe has considered this, the reason I think it's really important is that you look to research somebody, a surgeon that's going to help you with this process and procedure. And I think that Angharad, today's guest, really brings it alive, actually, what it's like to go through this particular journey, and also the actual conversation around why it wasn't helpful to follow weight loss plans such as Slimming World, Weight Watchers and all those other plans, and why she chose to take the route of going down the gastric bypass. Now, it's been a great success for Angharad, and she's changed her dress size from a size 26 to 28 to a UK size 6 to 8. I mean, that is such a fantastic achievement. And she knew that she'd got an issue with food right from her teens, and it took her well into her 30s to be able to even consider this as an option through the N.H.S, and then she actually paid for this procedure privately. It's quite an interesting episode, I feel, because it's not something that we often cover, but it's still really, really important for those people that are looking to go down this process and follow this procedure. And Angharad is she's a great mental health ambassador. So we talk a lot around the mindset in terms of weight loss, and not necessarily just weight loss, in terms of what it takes to be able to look at a plate of food and choose a portion, or to choose the ingredients that are going to serve you well, that are going to serve your body and nourish your body. So this is part one of Angharad's weight loss journey, and there'll be a part two to follow. And if you do follow Angharad on Instagram, you may well know that she's recently had skin removal surgery. So I'm also going to touch on that later down the line with a follow-up episode. And within this episode, we do mention Angharad's Instagram handle. So I'm just going to give it you now, because I think she's changed it. So it's Angharad, spelled ANGHARADS_next_chapter. So it is introducing Angharad to part one of her slimming story. Enjoy. Weight loss can be difficult for many people for many different reasons. And at what point in your life did you feel that you needed to take some action rather than just continue to allow weight to increase?
So I work for myself, and I've got a few clients that have had sleeves, gastric sleeves, and obviously I've heard about that before, and the bands and things like that. And after sort of looking into it for quite a while, I realised that actually the bypass was probably the best option for me, because there's less likelihood of any acid reflux. I was already having acid reflux quite badly, actually, Claire, where I was kind of waking up in the night choking on my acid. It was that bad. So I didn't really realise that, you know, the sleeve could impact that massively, and it actually could make more of a problem. So once I spoke to my surgeon about it, Dr. Shaw Summers at Streamline, have to plug him in, it just confirmed to me that actually the bypass, which is kind of the gold standard, would work well for me. And also as well, yes, it does have a malabsorption to it, and that's why it's bypass. So you've got I'll explain about the stomach. So you've got like an egg-sized stomach with the bypass, and with the sleeve, it's more of a long kind of banana shape. I think you've seen that on pictures, and they cut away 80% of your stomach. So with the bypass, you've actually probably got a bit more width of the stomach, so you probably can eat more than the sleeve. But what I loved about it was that I could make sure that I'm eating enough nutrients and having a decent portion of food, but then my body would naturally not absorb all of it. I mean, that's like a no-brainer, right? So I was like, oh, I'm in for this. So obviously, with any kind of bariatric surgery, you need to make sure that you are taking your vitamins and minerals and supplements. So yes, I do that as a regular thing every single day. And I think with the bypass and the mini gastric bypass, it's very, very, very important to do that. Just because you're not going to absorb all those essential minerals, because your body's trying to not absorb the fats, the carbohydrates and stuff, but obviously it's still not going to absorb all the vitamins. So that's kind of how that works. I suppose really, how long did it take me to get to this stage? Well, I think I've wanted to have a bypass probably since I was probably about 30, if I'm honest, and I'm nearly 40. I've been to the GP about it. I actually did get referred onto the N.H.S scheme when I was 35 and went through step tier 3, it's called, but never went any further because I lost 10% of my weight. And unfortunately for me, I didn't have any comorbidities. So I didn't have diabetes and I didn't have high blood pressure and things like that. So although it was affecting my mental health massively, I was getting tired, aches and pains, you know, all the other things that goes along with being extremely overweight, I was not clinically in need, if that makes sense, of funding. That was a massive, massive, massive kick in the teeth for me. And quite honestly, I then gained another 3 stone from just feeling hopeless, absolutely hopeless. And then it was really a case of, I was fortunate, I was saving money anyway to go and have this operation done. It was definitely in my remit of having it done sort of last year, this year. And then I was fortunate that I was left some money by my granddad, and it just gave me the opportunity to sort of get it done within a few weeks type of thing. And it was like the most, I can't explain to you, just the relief, the feeling that I can finally now get my weight in control, because I was so ready to do it, I was so focused. I knew that I had to change my life. I knew that it would be serious. I knew it was like an operation that, you know, it's not a quick fix as well. Do you know what I mean? I want to talk about that in a bit, but I felt like it was my time, and it just fell into place beautifully. So yeah, that was that. But if someone had if I'd got it for free, yes, I would have had it done years ago, definitely.
Yeah. And I think it's important just to touch on where you talk about you wanted to change your life, you wanted to take that action, you was ready. And I know that a lot of listeners will be listening thinking, well, if she was ready, why could she not connect to a weight loss plan or a fitness plan that may have helped that weight reduction? And I just wanted to talk about the mindset piece around how it feels for somebody when they feel out of control with food, with the meal, with the fact that, for example, if you're on cocaine and you detox, there would be no cocaine inside. But it can just be difficult being around food, and sticking to it can be quite difficult, can't it? So we just want to talk a little bit about that and how it felt for you, the old you before the bypass, and your relationship around food.
So that's a really, really good, valid question, because so many people I know have this mindset and they have this underlying thought, and I've come across it myself from friends, from colleagues and things like that, that actually, you know, if I was so desperate to lose weight, why has it not worked before? Why did I need to have this major surgery? Because it works for thousands of people. You know, I know lots of people on Instagram that have done incredibly well on Slimming World, for example. And, you know, I have myself felt like a failure, because actually I've tried every single one of these diets. But the reality of it was that I would say that I had an eating disorder, actually. And I would say that I suffered for years with disordered eating, emotional eating, stroke binge eating. I think really looking back now and doing a lot of work within myself, I've realised that this has actually been ongoing since probably a teenager.
Yeah.
And so, you know, for me, there was no other option for me. I'd done the you know, liquid diets and the cabbage diets and the, you know, all the different plans. I've done it all, and I've lost weight. I've lost a couple of stone, you know. But reality is that it didn't physically stop me from eating. There wasn't that kind of monetary investment value either, that I've spent, you know, over £10,000 on this.
Wow.
There wasn't I wasn't in the right mindset either. And I hadn't worked out in my head the emotional issues that I've got around food. And you're so right about food, because it is an addiction, all of this, drugs, alcohol, shopping, whatever. And food's always been my comfort. And I've always said that food has helped me when I'm sad, when I'm happy, when I'm nervous, when I'm excited. And it's been for every emotion. So I think when it's every emotion, it's so hard to get rid of that, because yes, we need food to eat. We need food to eat. And you're so right about, you know, drugs. You can come off that, because we don't need drugs to live, but we do need food. And I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done around this to understand actually that obesity isn't actually necessarily, it's not people being lazy. We're not sitting down eating cakes all day. No. You know that we're not doing that. It's our mindset, and our mindset is physically shown. You know, I realise now that I was ill, mentally ill, but it was showing physically in my body, if that makes sense. Absolutely. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I can really relate to that. And I think when I first started the podcast, or had the idea back in 2018, I can remember thinking to myself, do a podcast, Claire. The whole world's going to know you're looking to lose weight. This is going to be that click factor, going to fall into place. And there have been times since then, and producing the podcast and starting that in 2019, where I've had great momentum, I've followed it through. But the underlying current to that is, I know I have an issue with food. I'm not going to necessarily put it in a box and say it's this, or it's that, but I know I've got an issue with food. And most recently, I've had help using hypnotherapy and using a gastric sleeve within the hypnotherapy process. Now, I also know a lot of people that have done that and have lost a lot of weight with it. But the way that it worked for me in my situation is I've not had a binge for over 6 months. So when you talk about binge eating disorder, you talk about that, I totally know exactly what you mean. I totally know that, and I feel that. And as an hypnotherapist yourself, you'll understand that if you're able to absorb that information and have the discussion with your subconscious mind, there is power within hypnotherapy. And for me, I've not had a binge for 6 months. I've also not lost massive amounts of weight, but just that sense of, wow, I can go into a kitchen and I don't have to choose 3 packets of biscuits. But to be fair, I probably wouldn't have done that. I probably would have gone out to the shop and eaten them in the car, and then never would have been in the house in the first place. If I'm honest, Now that you've had this procedure, how does it feel being around food in general? If you'd just like to tell us about the feelings that you have within yourself when you know that you can go out for a meal and that you've not got that real compulsion to eat.
Well, I mean, it's life-changing. It's absolutely life-changing. Somebody that's constantly thought about food or always been hungry. I've always, some people say, well, it's head hunger. Like I've never really felt full, and yeah, if I was going out for a meal, I'd be looking at the menu, seeing what I can have, what starter, and it's all this big thing. And obviously socializing a lot of the time includes food. And to go out now and know that I will be satisfied with a kind of starter or even like a main, but making sure that I'm having, I'm very, very, very happy to eat like the protein. So knowing that I'm going to be really satisfied with, a piece of fish or chicken, and not then feel like, when I haven't had before this surgery and I was on, say, a diet, I would be like craving. I'd be looking at everyone's chips or onion rings or garlic bread or pasta or whatever, thinking I'm having this measly salad. And the chances are I'd have gone home and I would have had something because I was never kind of satisfied. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sort of putting on this kind of show of, I'm having this and I'm eating my diet. But I mean, at the beginning, I think the way that the process works, you go on a liver reducing diet, and that's kind of almost a detox at the beginning. And I think that I say this for a lot of people, that's one of the hardest part of this journey, because you're cutting away. Well, I was just on milk for 2 weeks, pure milk for 2 weeks, nothing else. That was, I would say, the most hardest thing I've ever done in my life, harder than the surgery, because that was literally cold turkey.
Yeah.
Can you imagine the headaches, the hunger pains that you're getting? I felt dizzy, I felt sick. But constantly I kept thinking to myself, I've just got to do this. I've just got to do this as an end goal. And I was so conscious of shrinking down my liver, because ultimately if your liver's large and fatty, they can't always operate on you. Right. So I just kept thinking, and especially when you've got money paid already, can you imagine thinking, the first thing I asked when I was woke up, like, have you done it? Because, you're worried, aren't you? You always think that you're going to be the one with the big liver. They're like, oh, really sorry, your liver's massive. So that was probably the hardest part. And then obviously after the surgery, you do lose complete appetite. You don't want to eat anything. You can't even really drink anything. And then you're kind of on like liquids and purees. It's almost being like a baby.
Yeah.
So it's all soft foods and stuff. And it's kind of relearning again, like textures and tastes. And again, my tastes have changed slightly. I'm definitely more sensitive to salt. If something's, I had a packet of French fries the other day, the crisps. I couldn't eat them. They were so salty for me. So it's definitely changed a few things within me. But the I'm not saying it's perfect, and that head hunger still has a role to play here.
Yeah.
And you still have urges around food, but the lightness that I feel, I don't feel that heaviness of that craving, if it makes sense. It's kind of dulled down a lot. I hope that answers the question.
Absolutely. So in terms of the nutrition, when you think of a meal now compared to a meal then, how does that compare? And is the fact that you don't like salty things, is that because you're eating a different type of meal in terms of like the nutritional balance of the food?
I think ultimately the main difference is quantities have changed. So my portion sizes have massively changed. So that's one thing. The other thing is that I realised, and through obviously talking to my dietitian and educating myself and doing lots of research, I realised that actually for me, I'm not saying for everybody, but for me, certain carbohydrates weren't doing me any favours. And so once I realised that the main goal was to really keep my protein very high, sort of 100 grams a day, when you know that you can't eat that much, in your head, you're thinking, right, I've got to eat my fish first before I eat anything else. And it's almost like you do get into that habit of thinking to yourself, oh, I really fancy that, but I want that as well, but I know I'm not going to be able to eat all of that. So you kind of almost, when you're having a meal, you're really prioritizing what you know that you need, but also what you fancy, because ultimately you can't eat all of it, if that makes sense. So yeah, I feel that I've gone through stages. I would always say that most of the time in my life, I've always cooked from scratch. And I definitely think that the majority of things, it's just lack of real knowledge from me of the things that I was eating. Was obviously eating the wrong things, and I was obviously having binges on the wrong things. I'll put my hands upon that 100%. Obviously having, chocolate, snacky foods. But I think that, majority of the time now, I'm eating really clean, and I think I'm eating the best I've ever at in my life, actually. I've had my bloods done recently, and they're all perfect levels. In actual fact, my GP said that they were better than they were last year, which is incredible, isn't it, when you think about this? So yesterday I had a chicken thigh that I kind of marinate and, so make it really, really tasty, make some for the kids as well. I air fry it sometimes. And then I had like a little bit of gravy with it, and then just like broccoli and green beans and a few, like literally, I don't know, half a sort of cube of sweet potato, just to have. So I want to have a balanced diet. Do you know what I mean? I'm definitely not against having carbs, but I think it's just making sure that I'm having the right type of things. And I honestly was like, oh, I loved it. I was really full, and it does make you feel so much better as well. Do you know what I mean? When you sort of have a nice meal, I just felt great. And then, for like my I do have dessert, but you can't eat sort of immediately after. So perhaps an hour later, I'll have some berries, a bit of cream, which again, in my mindset, cream is bad, cheese is bad. But now I realise that they're not bad. Like nothing's bad. It's all about making sure that your macros are the right, the right way, and you're having the right types of food.
So when, people say maybe on Slimming World or Weight Watchers, you fill up with your proteins, and that's because it stays within the gut. It doesn't release it, where like your rice, pastas and things like that, they get released quicker. So that's why you feel fuller for longer. I'm not a big fan of meat, probably more the fish. But I totally understanding the science behind it, why it's not just a thing. There's a reason why, and that's because it takes a lot longer for the acids to break that down. And listening to you explain how you're now managing a meal and preparing your meal, there's a lot of thought and care, I guess, that has gone into that. And how has this affected your self-esteem? It's almost, listening to your story and listening to this great journey that you've been on, it's almost like you've picked yourself up and you've got this great intention to really look after yourself. It's not a case of, you've had this procedure, you've lost the weight, and now you've got a smaller stomach and now you can eat less. It's a case of, right, okay, I've had this procedure, and I'm going to really, really look after myself. It feels like there's an energy when I talk to you about applying lots of love and self-care, even in that meal that, you described, that you put it in the air fryer. Now, I've got an air fryer, and one chicken, fry in an air fryer is not, I can see that, but the mindset piece, but I can also see how that plate could look and how you describe that. And that, I guess, is something far removed from how you would have been in the past. So what do you feel has changed for you to pick yourself up and really apply that love and self-care?
Well, I think that the truth of the matter is, before surgery, I've been quite honest about it. I'd go for days without, I would go through periods where I wouldn't wash, really was at the lowest of my low, wouldn't brush my teeth unless I had to see somebody, would cancel work, really, really, really struggled. And it was with myself. Other people it wasn't that other people didn't like me, it was me that didn't like me. I was ashamed. I shouldn't have been ashamed. And looking back on myself now, I am sad that I felt that way about myself, because I'm still who I am now. Do you know what I mean? I needed to be nurtured more than I've ever needed to be nurtured in my life. I needed to be looked after more than I've ever needed to be looked after. But I suppose I felt that I wasn't right for society, that, you know, men wouldn't find me attractive, that people would look at me and think basically negative connotations. And I really let that absorb into me, which, you know, I am sad about now. Do you know what I mean? But I've moved past that. And, you know, by regaining my Instagram account is actually one of the most influential things that I've done. It's really helped to build me up. I've been committed. I've been consistent. I have been honest. I have used that to be open and say, look, this is me. It's completely public, my Instagram account. Anyone can follow me. I've not hidden it from anybody. So-and-so in the shop might see me and say, oh, I'm following you on Instagram. I'm like, are you? Like, I don't really know them, but they're following me. And they're like, wow. And, you know, and to hear people say, wow, you've really inspired me and stuff, because I've done my videos on there right from day one. And you can see that I'm very low. I'm depressed. I've got no self-confidence. And I started stripping away and working out what was making me feel so low. And I think it's working on that, realising that I am enough, that I do have a space in this world for me.
Yeah.
I never dreamt that I'd have over 5,000 people wanting to follow me, message me, chat with me, say, wow, you know, I was having a really bad day and I've seen you walking in the rain. And, you know, I've been from day one committed. I've got out of there every single day, walked. Walking has been my saviour. I've walked up to recently over 5 miles a day, regardless of the weather. I made that a mission. And, you know, people were sort of in bed saying, you know, gosh, you know, you just really made me think I need to get myself dressed. And sometimes you just need to see other people and think, you know, they're not perfect. You know, I'm a single mum. I have, you know, got, you know, children with additional needs. I've been very honest about my mental health journey. I am not living a lifestyle. I'm not a perfect, you know, person. I don't have designer handbags. I'm real. But it's made me appreciate and value that I do deserve this, that I can have a nice shower with some nice shower gel and put my makeup on and do my hair because it makes me feel good. Yeah. I love it. I love it.
And so you should. I mean, looking at you and hearing you talk about days that you couldn't brush your teeth and you're in bed and having those times, and then having the bravery, because it is a brave move to be really open on social media. I mean, that is a credit to you, and you will not be able to put a price on the value of that to that one person, that, you know, the five people that was looking at that, you know, even this one person was looking at that and that needed to see that. Because when people are in that moment and they switch on the TV and look at the bright lights and everywhere that looks all sparkly, in that moment, people really need to be able to make that connection to make them realise that your journey can be their journey too, and that they can get out and go for that walk, whether it be a mile or 2 miles, whatever that is, and you know, the commitment of going out in the rain. And I'm a strong believer of walking, I really am. But no, it's a big credit to you that you've been able to show up in a really honest, congruent way, and that's going to really help people, because what that does is it gives people hope. It gives them hope that, you know, they're not on their own, they don't have to feel this way, but maybe they'll have days where they are feeling like that, and that's okay too. And I think just like with the podcast, it's not a case of, right, okay, somebody's overweight and then they lose weight and then everything is rosy. You know, it's life, isn't it? We're going to ride that wave. There's going to be the peaks and the troughs. But no, that's definitely inspiration. I'm so pleased to hear that you're getting you're just getting that platform to nurture yourself in a public way. And I also feel that on Instagram there's so many encouraging words, so many encouraging posts, and when somebody does show up in a real way, it just feels a true blessing.
Oh, thank you so much.
Such an amazing amazing story, and learning about this gastric bypass is something that I think it's important to learn about. And I think for some people that feel that this is the option, then it's important that we cover it. It's Slimming Stories, and this is definitely a slimming story that is different and really inspiring, truly inspiring. She's a great mental health ambassador too. And I love the fact that she's now at peace with the body that she has. Her mental health has improved massively. It really, really has. Now, when we recorded this episode, I believe that she may have changed her Instagram handle. So I'm just going to give you that again. So it's Angharad, spelled ANGHARADS_next_chapter. And I'll also put a link in the show notes to her Instagram account. And if you'd like to go and follow her, give her some support, and maybe you listen to this episode considering this as an option. And if so, I'm sure that she'd be happy to help you. And she did give the details of her surgeon, which is Dr. Shaw Summers of Streamline Surgical. And I think it's good that if you are looking at going through some sort of process or procedure like this, that you look and research for surgeons that have done this procedure successfully before, because you want to know that you're going to be in safe hands. And I know that some people can have this procedure within the N.H.S, but for those of you that can't, that's just a heads up if you're looking to find somebody that you feel that you can trust and somebody that's had a good experience with another client. Thank you for tuning in for another episode of Slimming Stories. Can you believe we're nearly 2 years of podcasting? Sounds absolute crazy to me to think that I've been doing this for 2 years, but we're nearly there. And if you've not yet hit subscribe, please do so. And part 2 of Angharad's Slimming Story will be following very, very soon. If you have a guest in mind that you think would be really inspirational for the podcast, please drop me a DM over on Instagram. I'd love to hear from you. So have a great week, and until next time, take care.